The story begins with a mysterious monster named Kaiju attacking the city, and the news alerting the people to head to safety zones. The defense force is informed that the Kaiju is about 60 meters in length, and the defense force of the 3rd Division heroically defeats the Kaiju. A group of people sitting far away look at the mess caused by the Kaiju and say that they will have to work overtime, as they are Kaiju cleaners. Kafka Habino is one of the cleaners, who explains that while no one cares or is grateful for their work, they too fight a battle against the dead Kaiju. The blood of Kaiju is acidic, and Kafka is worried that they have to clean it all up in just a week. Soon, the supervisor tells Kafka that they are understaffed in an area and sends him to the intestines, despite Kafka's strong refusal. The others explain how the intestines are the most difficult part, as it has all the excretory material in it. But Kafka gets to work and is traumatized by the smell. That night, he can still smell the intestines in his bed. There, on the TV, he sees the captain of the 3rd Division, Mina Ashiro, getting praised for being so skilled for her age. Kafka remembers the promise he made to her to eliminate the Kaiju together, and is frustrated by how different their lives turned out to be. Mina is a candidate for the commander position, and Kafka turns off the TV to stare at his reflection. Kafka tells himself to not think like that, as cleaning is a part of helping people. He reflects on how he lives in a good room and can afford the food he wants to eat, so that should be enough. The next day, at work, Kafka is introduced to a new part-time worker, Reino Ichikawa, who is trying to join the defense forces. Another worker tells Reino that Kafka dreamt the same too, but gave it up a long time ago and ended up working with them long term. But Reino asks him why he gave up. Kafka explains that as he grew old, there was always someone better than him, so he eventually stopped trying. Reino, however, says that he doesn't understand people who give up, so he won't end up like Kafka. They head to the cleaning site, and Kafka and Reino are allotted the intestines. During the lunch break, both Kafka and Reino don't feel like eating, so Kafka hands Reino a multivitamin drink and forces plugs up in his nose. After finishing, Reino thanks Kafka for helping him through his first day and tells him that the age for getting recruited into the defense force has been extended to 33-year-olds. He explains that it is because of declining birth rates, and Kafka stops him to thank him, which makes Reino embarrassed. But before he can protest, a Kaiju appears on the scene and is about to gobble Reino when Kafka pushes him out of the way. Kafka realizes it is a small Kaiju, also known as Yoju, and tells Reino to run and call for help while he holds the Kaiju back. Kafka calls the Yoju and is again reminded of how a Kaiju destroyed his and Mina's house, and they both said they wanted to be part of the defense force at the same time. And Kafka promised to eliminate Kaijus with her. Just as the Yoju is about to eat Kafka, Reino arrives, saying he has informed the defense team. He says that if he abandoned Kafka, he would never become a good officer. And Kafka again feels enraged at how he is unable to protect his juniors. Suddenly, Mina arrives and kills the Yoju in one blow. She orders 2 of her team members to help the injured, while others follow her and look for any remaining Yojus. In the hospital, Kafka thinks of how far Mina has reached, but before he can think much about it, Reino tells Kafka that he saved his life. He thanks Kafka and tells him that he deserves to be a defense force officer. Kafka becomes determined and tells him that he will try once again for the defense force. But then, Kafka sees a flying small Kaiju above him, and before he can react, the monster says that he found him and enters his mouth, transforming Kafka into a Kaiju. Both Kafka and Reino are shocked. However, an old man sees them and makes an alert. Realizing that Kafka will be killed, they decide to run. On the other side, Mina thinks of how she once told Kafka that she would be scared of fighting Kaiju alone, and he promised to be there for her. She calls him a liar and suddenly gets an alert and dispatches her team to eliminate the Kaiju. Mina dispatches her team, and alerts are sent to everyone. Meanwhile, Kafka, in his Kaiju form, tries to tell the old man that he isn't a threat, but his smile is so creepy that the old man passes out from fear. He touches the wall but doesn't realize his power and accidentally breaks the wall. All the glass objects in the room shatter because of the impact. He decides to escape through the window to avoid causing trouble for other patients, but ends up breaking another wall. They start running and Kafka begins another weird transformation. Suddenly, a thing emerges from his mouth and eats a bird alive. This causes Kafka to revert to his original kaiju body. While running, Kafka exclaims that there is another emergency that he needs to pee. Reno claims that Kafka doesn't have the right organs to pee from, and Kafka starts peeing from his nipples. Feeling extremely embarrassed, Kafka rolls on the floor, saying no one will marry him now. Reno, however, tells him he has bigger things to worry about than a wife, like resuming the run. Kafka then considers that he may have a chance at joining the defense force in this form, but Reno explains that they will kill him on sight. Realizing his dreams of catching up to Mina are futile, Kafka follows Reno to an empty warehouse. However, before they can take refuge, Kafka senses something coming from the ground. Suddenly, another kaiju emerges, and Mina heads to that location. Reno tells Kafka that this might be their chance, as the defense team will be divided into two, allowing them to escape. Meanwhile, a newly sighted Yoju is about to eat a child when Kafka intervenes and punches it. He tells Reno to take the child and her unconscious mother to a hospital while he handles the Yoju. Kafka punches the Yoju with all his might. Electricity courses through it, and it explodes. Kafka stands as it rains blood before telling them to go, as the defense forces will arrive any minute. The child is scared of Kafka and hides behind Reno. Kafka feels sad and decides to go away so he doesn't stress the child. But just as he starts walking, she thanks him for saving her. The child's gratitude reminds Kafka of his promise to Mina. He tells Reno he won't give up on his dream of joining the defense force. Kafka then begins transforming back into a human, and they leave before getting caught. The defense forces are shocked to find a dead kaiju. Mina asks the child to describe the kaiju she saw. The child, however, pleads with Mina not to hurt the good kaiju, as he saved her. Mina is stunned. The Defense Academy labels him Kaiju No. 8, marking him as missing. 3 months later, Reno explains how Kafka is the only kaiju who has managed to escape the defense forces. Kafka now can transform at will, though he still occasionally slips into his monster form by accident. Reno tells Kafka that they have both passed the first round of the Defense Force selection process and nags him to be more careful. Reno expects Kafka to be happy about passing the first round, but Kafka reveals he always fails at the second round. Reno warns him against attempting the second round in his monster form, as officers will be everywhere. Reno declares that from now on they are rivals, and Kafka agrees. 10 days later, they arrive at the defense base for the second round. Seeing the number of officers present, Reno warns that Kafka will be dead meat if he transforms into a kaiju here. In the parking lot, they encounter other competent candidates. Suddenly, a young girl calls Kafka an old man and demands he park somewhere else because she wants his spot. Her lucky number is 5, and Kafka is parked in the 55th spot. When Kafka refuses, she powers up her suit, picks up his car with one hand, and throws it into the 53rd spot. She introduces herself as Kikaru Shinomiya and tells Kafka that he smells like a kaiju. Reno explains that they work at a kaiju cleaning company, but Kafka just goes and picks up his car to park it properly. Kikaru is shocked that Kafka has his private suit, and she tells him that she was expecting the exam to just be a formality, but now she is looking forward to it, as it might be more interesting than she thought. Reno gets mad at Kafka for using his powers, but he quickly tells him he only transformed the part of his hand which she couldn't see. Hearing the commotions, the guards tell them to go inside. Kafka thinks it's finally time to stand next to Mina, and they both head in. They announce that the second level has fitness and aptitude tests. They aim to get high scores on the fitness test so they won't have to rely on the aptitude test, but Kafka struggles as his body is not as young as it used to be. He places 219th out of the 225 participants, while Kikaru ranks 5th. Reno tells Kafka he's proud of him for not using his powers, but Kafka admits he wishes he could say that everyone deserves a fair chance after working hard to get there. Still, he can't help but wish he had used his kaiju powers. Meanwhile, a member of the 3rd Division reports to Mina about the participants he is monitoring. The first is Izumo Haruichi, a top student at Tokyo Neutralization University, who ranked 2nd in the fitness test. The second is Furuhashi Iharu, another valedictorian who ranked 3rd. Kaguragi Aoi, a rising star in Japan's ground self-defense forces, ranked 1st. Lastly, he mentions Kikoru Shinomiya, a 16-year-old prodigy who graduated early from California Neutralization Academy after skipping several years. Kafka places a hand on Kikoru's shoulder and says he doesn't know how awesome she is. Her bodyguards immediately beat Kafka for touching Kikoru, and she laughs at him. Reno encourages Kafka not to give up, reminding him that the aptitude test will evaluate their ability to work in a group and their knowledge about kaijus. He adds that for the past 2 years, the aptitude test has involved cleaning up a kaiju's body, which is why he worked part-time at their company. The vice captain of the 3rd Division, Hoshina, opens the gate to the aptitude test venue and reveals a kaiju, instructing the applicants to neutralize it. Kafka falls back in fear, and Kikoru laughs at him. The applicants are given Defense Force combat suits, which bond with their bodies and immediately enhance their muscles. In the back, the 3rd Division operator begins measuring the power unleashed by participants using the suits. Reno scores 8% combat power, Izumo scores 18%, Kaguragi scores 15%, and Furuhashi scores 14%. The operator is shocked, as they usually only get a single participant above 10%. Suddenly, she notices Kikoru's score, 46%. Reno feels disappointed with his 8%, but Hoshina reassures him, saying even 0% qualifies for the test, though he has never seen anyone score 0%. The operator then announces that Kafka has unleashed 0% power. Hoshina laughs, calling him a disappointment, and remarks that someone so funny won't pass the test. Hoshina announces that the participants will face a few yoju that caused 16 casualties last year, but were captured for training purposes. He explains that each participant will wear a drone camera, and if they are in serious danger, their suit's shield will activate, which will mean failure. The test begins, and Kikoru swiftly eliminates yoju after yoju. Hoshina announces that Captain Mina has arrived to observe the test, encouraging participants to make a good impression. Kafka's demeanor changes immediately. He resolves to use his last chance to pass. He tells Reno that if the objective were just to kill the most yoju, the defense force would install sensors on them. Instead, they should assist those taking the offensive. Kafka approaches a yoju many are attacking and realizes it is blind, but has extraordinary hearing. He throws a deafening grenade at it, then instructs the others to aim for its weaker stomach skin. They follow his instructions and defeat the yoju. As they move to support another group, a yoju grabs Kafka and hurls him into a wall. As the yoju prepares to kill him and Hoshina prepares to activate Kafka's shield, Kafka struggles to stand, determined not to embarrass himself in front of Mina. Suddenly, Kikoru arrives and kills the yoju. She declares that no one is allowed to die or drop out on her battlefield, vowing to finish the exam in no time. She mockingly tells Kafka to lie down like a loser while she handles the rest, then resumes eliminating kaiju. Hoshina contacts Kafka, informing him of his multiple fractures and internal injuries, and advises him to drop out. However, Kafka thinks of his 0% power score and the daily disappointment he faces for failing to stand beside Mina. Refusing to give up this time, Kafka stands, and his suit reports 0.01% power unleashed. Kafka tells Reno to go ahead and fight as they decide to do it as rivals, but Reno tells him that he will back him up. He picks Kafka on his shoulders and feels embarrassed by the looks they are getting. However, Reno runs fast and tells Kafka to use his strategies to help Kikoru once they reach her. But she doesn't let anyone assist her and slays all the yojus before heading to the bigger Honju and throwing a grenade at it. As Hanju screams in pain, she stands above its mouth and shoots inside it, eliminating it. It is announced that the exam is over, and Kafka and Reno are annoyed that Kikoru finished everything in minutes. The drones are called back, and the operator asks if she should send medics for the injured, and Hoshina absent-mindedly tells her to do so. He thinks how difficult it was to set up the entire place only for Kikoru to finish this in no time. Hoshina says that he expected that about 30 people would fail this test, but no one did, and all the participants had minor injuries, all thanks to Kikoru. Hoshina says that one could expect this much from director Shinomiya's daughter, and claims that she will be a ray of hope for this country. Kikoru, on the other side, stares at the sky and asks her father if she performed perfectly. She turns back, saying it's time she goes, and laughs at Kafka's face when suddenly a new kaiju emerges, points a finger at her, and pierces her chest. Meanwhile, Reno and Kafka lay on the floor, exhausted. Kafka expresses his awe over Kikoru, and Reno is about to agree, but is quickly interrupted by the regeneration of the dead monsters. Kikoru has a hard time standing up because of her injuries, and notices that she was barely able to protect her heart. She looks at the kaiju and wonders what that thing is, to which the kaiju replies that it's shocking she is still alive. Kikoru is surprised to hear it talk, but the kaiju notices that Kikoru is healing, and he asks what is happening to her skin. Kikoru is further shocked that the kaiju has intelligence. She aims to shoot at him, but he again points his fingers at her and throws invisible blades at her, injuring her badly. Mina quickly orders them to send back cameras to get a video report, operate the shields of all participants, and tells Hoshina to follow her out to the battlefield. Alerts for the examinees to evacuate the place are launched. But Kikoru refuses to evacuate, saying if she leaves, this monster will only hurt the participants. So she pushes herself to think that she can still fight, claiming that nobody dies when she is on the battlefield. She thinks of a memory of her father saying she needs to be perfect, and she stands up but is quickly thrown away by the monster. She gets another flashback of how, in school, everyone used to praise her for scoring the best. But her friend's father came to pick her up from school and was proud of her for passing, while Kikoru got no reward or love for being the best. At home, she tells her father about her top score, but he dismisses it, telling her to not celebrate small wins. Her father had told her to never let anyone be better than her. She remembers this and stands up again, only to be smashed by the kaiju. He develops into an even stronger monster, and Kikoru eventually admits her defeat and even apologizes to her father. Hoshina is worried that he and Mina might not reach in time to save Kikoru, and a tear rolls down Kikoru's face when Kafka shows up and tells her that she did a great job. He diverts the attack and tells her that, because she fought bravely, everyone was able to evacuate, and turns into his kaiju form. We get a flashback where the remaining members of the defense force all rush to evacuate the examination site. As they make sure everyone is safe, Kafka learns that Kikoru is still inside trying to fight back. Reno is hesitant about what to do, but before he can decide, Kafka is already gone to save Kikoru. At this, he fears Kafka is going to transform and reveal his identity and get killed, but admires his friend's bravery. As Kafka transforms into a kaiju, Kikoru is confused, but Kafka begs her to keep this a secret. The operator informs Mina and Hoshina that she is getting an ultra power of fortitude 9.8, as another kaiju must have emerged on the site. But Hoshina tells her it might be because of the blast, as they've never seen a kaiju that strong. Kafka screams and punches the kaiju with such a strong blow that its flesh bursts into pieces. Kafka turns his face back to human and tells Kikoru that she can't put herself in danger like this ever again, and Reno appears to scold Kafka for putting himself in such danger. Kikoru is still confused, but does not try to clear things up as she is too exhausted and faints. After this, Mina and Hoshina finally arrive. There, Hoshina tries to understand what happened but is very confused. The operator informs them that Reino, Kikaru, and Kafka have arrived at the shelter as well, making all examinees safe. Hoshina says that he understands that Kikoru is strong, but there is no way she could have done this all on her own, and Mina says that there is a lot they don't understand, like the regeneration of the beast or his ability to increase its fortitude level. Hoshina remembers how he saw the same scene 3 months ago and wonders if this has any link to Kaiju number 8. Kafka is in the hospital, and Reno is glad that Kafka only has a few fractures. He also informs him that Kikaru is in stable condition, and Kafka throws a fit that he was sent to a simple hospital, while Kokiru was treated by a special team in the defense base. Reno tells Kafka that he should be grateful he had minor injuries, while Kokiru suffered serious damage. Kafka tells him that having a dream is weird, as there are always better people than you, yet you want to do the best you can for it. And he thanks Reno for being a great friend. Mina listens to this conversation from outside and steps in without a word. She salutes them to show her thanks for rescuing Kikaru and leaves. Kafka thinks of stopping her to talk, but then stops himself, thinking that he will talk to her after he becomes a part of the defense forces. Hoshina visits Kikaru and thanks her for defeating the monster, and then questions if it was she who defeated the kaiju, to which she replies that she did it. That night, the kaiju number 9 that emerged out of the Honju listens to the news and realizes there were 0 casualties. He wonders if the captain is that strong, but he suddenly gets a call that asks him to get back to work as his break time is over, and he turns into a human to reveal that he is the new worker in the cleaning company where Kafka and Reno worked. Kafka is freaking out when a supervisor arrives to tell them they have both received mail. Kafka briefly considers standing and fighting beside Mina before opening his letter. The day of the appointment arrives, and all the expected people gather, greeting each other. Mina enters and instructs Kikaru to take the oath on behalf of the 27 people who have been appointed. After the oath, Mina thanks Kikaru for saving everyone on the day of the test. However, Kikaru feels guilty, knowing it was Kafka who defeated the monster. She thinks Kafka deserves the praise when, suddenly, a disheveled Kafka enters the room, apologizing for being late. Mina recalls the meeting during which Kafka initially failed. Before she could intervene, Hoshina had spoken up, explaining that Kafka's ability to locate the enemy's weak points and prioritize helping others over personal kills made him invaluable. Hoshina admitted he wasn't sure if Kafka could be promoted to officer rank, but thought his humor and teamwork made him a great addition as a cadet. Mina informs the team that Kafka is not one of the 27 appointed officers, but has joined as a cadet. Mina delivers a speech, stating that the kaiju have become more dangerous than ever, and some recruits might not survive their first mission. However, she promises to lead from the front, acting as their shield and spear. Suddenly, Kafka shouts from the audience, declaring that he will soon be standing next to Mina, and the entire room cringes. Mina tells him he spoke out of turn and disrespected a superior, punishing him with 100 push-ups. Hoshina bursts out laughing and even notices Mina suppressing a smile. Hoshina reflects that Kafka's humor is only part of the story as he recalls an incident where Kaiju was recorded with a fortitude of 9.8, and Kafka's vitals briefly stop transmitting, making him suspect Kafka is hiding something. Kikaru pulls Kafka aside, and he wonders if she plans to beat him up. But she explains her concerns about his secret, and Kafka suggests telling the defense force. Kikaru strongly opposes this, arguing that even if they don't kill him, they will experiment on him. She reveals that the special forces use Kaiju's body parts to create weapons. Kikaru then warns Kafka that if he ever turns evil, she won't hesitate to eliminate him. Their training begins, and Reno increases his unleashed power to 18% by completing the first mission efficiently. Furuhashi goes next, completing it even quicker and boosting his combat power to 20%. Kikaru, however, finishes fastest, achieving a combat power of 55%. While the others complete the task in under 3 minutes, Kafka takes nearly 7, registering a combat power of only 1%. He expresses his happiness by chasing Kikaru, but Hoshino warns him that he'll be fired in 3 months if he doesn't improve. In the showers, the group engages in playful banter about muscle size. Kafka flexes briefly before relaxing, revealing his protruding stomach and causing everyone to laugh. Kaguragi enters, wondering why they are so loud. The group falls silent upon seeing Kaguragi's toned physique. Meanwhile, Kikaru and the other women enter the female bath, finding Mina already there. Kikaru, observing Mina's well-toned body, wonders about the source of her strength and eventually asks about her training routine. So Mina shares a few basic techniques with her.
Back with the boys, they discuss what motivated them to join the forces. Furuhashi reveals that Mina saved him in middle school, inspiring him to follow her path. Most of the others also attribute their reasons to Mina. When Kafka shares his story, the group is shocked and pressures him for every detail he knows about Mina. They stay in the hot bath too long and are sprawled on the floor when the girls emerge. Training continues for several days. One evening, as Kafka trains alone, Hoshina approaches him. He acknowledges Kafka's desire to fight beside Mina, but warns him not to grow too close to the team, as anything could happen at any time. Suddenly, an alarm blares, signaling a kaiju sighting. Hoshina informs them that this is their first mission. The area under threat, Sagamihara, is being evacuated while the defense force strategizes. Mina decides to handle the Honju from the center and deploys others to deal with the multiple Yoju that have appeared nearby. The team loads their weapons, and Hoshino instructs them to prepare for their first major mission. Meanwhile, Kafka nearly throws up in the car, prompting everyone around him to scold him. Hoshino explains that the Honju is producing a large number of Yoju and emphasizes that it's their responsibility to eliminate them. He notes that their placement at the very back of the defense line indicates they aren't expected to fight directly, but it also makes them the last line of defense, adding immense pressure. Once the evacuation of the area is confirmed, the mission begins. Kafka nervously admits to Reino that he's never been this excited in his life. While everyone leaps off the building to engage the enemy, Kafka awkwardly slides down instead.
At the sniper position, Mina prepares her weapon as the operator orders the officers to open fire on the Honju. The bullets, however, have no effect. Meanwhile, Kafka's combat suit begins to unleash its power, but he's quickly struck by a Yoju. Kikaru yells at him to stay back, reminding him that he's the weakest among them. Nearby senior officers, irritated by Kafka's incompetence, complain that they don't want to babysit anyone. This enrages Kikaru, who disregards the order to play it safe and eliminates several Yoju on her own. Kafka praises her, causing Kikaru to blush. Furuhashi takes down 2 Yoju with the help of his teammates, while Reno single-handedly defeats a larger one. He explains that he's been practicing new techniques and expects to become even more efficient once he masters them. Meanwhile, Izumo, another new recruit, causes a pole to collapse, trapping 3 Yoju, which he promptly eliminates. The senior officers, shocked by the recruit's skills, marvel at how this year's batch appears far more capable than most.
Another team leader remarks that the recruits' high average power, combined with their competitive rivalry, seems to be pushing them to excel. Kafka overhears the chatter about the recruits clearing out every sector and wonders how he can contribute. He examines a dead Yoju, cuts it open, and identifies the core at the back of its neck. He also discovers that the Yoju's reproductive organs, if left intact, could lead to new offspring. Kafka reports his findings to Hoshino, who praises his research skills and shares the information with the entire defense force. Motivated, Kafka vows to neutralize as much Yoju as possible and promises himself that he'll one day fight alongside Mina. A sudden blast interrupts the mission, and it's reported that the Honju has reached the site, aided by the Air Force, which led it there. The defense team begins attacking the Honju's legs to immobilize it. Mina, wielding a massive cannon, prepares to fire. She briefly reflects on Kafka, thinking to herself that she has become someone truly cool. Unleashing 96% of her combat power, she fires the cannon, penetrating the beast and halting its movement after 3 powerful shots. As she readies a 4th, the team is shocked by her relentless determination, but she refuses to let them interrupt the mission. Hoshino approaches Kafka, mockingly asking if he truly has what it takes to stand beside Mina. Kafka taunts him back, asking if Hoshino has enough power himself. Hoshino admits that his unleashed combat power isn't particularly high, which limits his effectiveness against long-range enemies. However, he boasts that he's unmatched against short-range kaiju, even better than Mina. To prove it, he effortlessly slices a kaiju in half within a second, without even turning to face it. Hoshino explains that the president and vice president are equipped with specially tailored tools that match their fighting styles. His, for instance, is a katana. Mina then announces that the Honju is down, but warns the team that the real challenge is about to begin, as the creature has produced a swarm of Yoju.
The operator reports that the recruits are fatigued, and Hoshino acknowledges that such missions are grueling for beginners. He tells the recruits that if they manage to overcome this, they'll be well prepared for future challenges. He further explains that most Defense Force officers operate at 20–30% of their unleashed combat power, with only a few surpassing that threshold to become leaders. He notes that Kikoru is already at that level and believes Reino will soon join her. Meanwhile, Furuhashi feels frustrated that no matter how hard he tries, he can't keep up with Reino. As they head to the front line, they encounter a man wearing a kaiju cleaner's hoodie. The man expresses disappointment over the destruction of the reproductive organs he implanted in the Yoju. He speculates that someone on the team must possess extensive knowledge about kaiju and turns to face them. Suddenly, buds emerge from his face as he begins transforming into a kaiju.
The man turns around and, with a flick of his finger, launches an invisible blade at Furuhashi. He narrowly misses the heart and mutters in disappointment, blaming his decreased accuracy in this form. As he speaks, he begins transforming into a kaiju. Reno quickly tries to report the sighting of a humanoid kaiju, but the creature smirks while explaining that he has tampered with their communication devices to remain hidden among humans. Kaiju number 9 then fires 2 swift attacks at Reno, injuring him, but not fatally. Reno avoids his other attacks, and the kaiju deduces that Reno can somehow see his attacks. Reno flashes back to a moment when Kikoru had advised them to watch the kaiju's fingers closely to anticipate his moves. Using this tactic, Reno successfully dodges further attacks and shields Furuhashi, instructing him to call for backup. Though Reno knows he stands little chance against the kaiju, he refuses to back down and opens fire to buy time. Meanwhile, Furuhashi, grappling with his frustration, reflects on his inability to push beyond 20% of his unleashed combat power, while Reno continually surpasses him. As he retreats, he can't shake the realization that it's not Reno he resents, but his own shortcomings. The kaiju suddenly teleports in front of Reno and mocks him, saying that while Reno may know some things about kaiju, there's so much more he doesn't understand. Muscles swell on the creature's body, signaling a devastating attack. Just then, Furuhashi returns, shoving Reno out of harm's way. Furuhashi refuses to be someone who is saved by others and throws electric bullets at the kaiju, distracting him enough to dodge the invisible blades. Reno seizes the opportunity, channeling all his power into a desperate shot. Praying for strength comparable to Mina's or Kikoru's, he fires with all his might. However, when the smoke clears, the kaiju is unharmed, having built a wall of corpses to shield himself. He then launches a brutal assault on Reno. As Reno struggles to move, the kaiju shifts his focus to Furuhashi, striking him down before returning to torment Reno. Furuhashi, barely able to stand, watches Reno suffer and thinks about how Reno has the potential to become a captain someday. Desperately, he reaches for a nearby gun but finds it empty. Resigned to defeat, he silently pleads for someone to save Reno.
At this moment, Kafka arrives in his kaiju form, declaring that the only one dying here is Kaiju No. 9. With a single devastating punch, Kafka decapitates the kaiju. Reno, despite his relief, feels a pang of guilt, lamenting that he forced Kafka to transform. Kafka places Reno in a safe spot as Kaiju No. 9 reattaches his head, and declares that he will eat Kafka to become stronger. The kaiju unleashes a barrage of invisible blades, with the help of multiple hands emerging from his back. Kafka roars in fury and deflects every blade before launching another attack.
Kaiju No. 9 attempts to shield himself with another corpse wall, but Kafka tears through it with ease. With his core now exposed, the kaiju collapses, leaving Kafka ready to deliver the final blow. Before he can finish the job, 2 officers arrive on the scene, reporting the presence of a humanoid kaiju. Kikaru scolds Kafka over the comms for letting himself get discovered. Taking advantage of the distraction, Kaiju No. 9 heals himself and promises to kill Kafka the next time he sees him. After that, he vanishes into thin air.
Kafka punches the ground to create a smokescreen and flees to a hidden alley. He's moments away from reverting to his human form when Hoshino appears, declaring that he's finally found Kaiju No. 8. Without hesitation, the fight begins. Both quickly realize they're evenly matched, but Hoshino unleashes 92% of his combat power, declaring that he will be the one who neutralizes Kaiju No. 8. Kafka hesitates before using his fists against Hoshino, but realizes he can't survive if he holds back. He notices that Hoshino is faster than anyone he's ever seen. Hoshino admits Kafka must have great strength, but something feels strange to him. Still, he brushes it off and uses a decoy attack, aiming for Kafka's core. Kafka blocks and breaks Hoshino's blade, forcing him to retreat. At that moment, Kafka vanishes, leaving Hoshino disappointed in himself. Kikaru wonders if she can trust Kafka, but then he appears in his human form, almost collapsing from exhaustion. He apologizes for letting Kaiju No. 9 escape, but Kikaru tells him not to worry as she plans to kill it herself. When Kafka tries to check on Reno, saying he's badly injured, she stops him, scolding him to take care of himself since he almost got caught. Meanwhile, Mina talks to Hoshino, who says Kaiju No. 8 might be a Daikaiju. Mina mentions it would be the strongest in 5 years since the Fukuoka incident. Hoshino points out that Kaiju No. 8 hasn't harmed humans recently, and even avoided attacking him directly as its moves seemed calculated, almost human-like. Just then, they learn that the kaiju that attacked Reno and Furuhashi was humanoid and looked human when it was found. In another scene, Kaiju No. 9 eats a man in an empty tunnel and takes his form. He plans to hide until he gets used to the new body. Reno wakes up and thanks Kafka for saving him and Furuhashi. However, Kafka looks at him strangely, and Reno realizes Furuhashi is in the room. They cover it up and praise Kaiju No. 8 for protecting them. After leaving the hospital, the group celebrates. Izumo, heir to the biggest anti-kaiju arms company, treats everyone to a beef dinner. Reno thanks Hoshino for allowing the party, but Hoshino warns him to wait. Just then, the mood shifts as everyone starts teasing and arguing about their mission performance. Kafka jokes about the suits being defective since he could only use 1% of their power. Hoshino reminds them that the mission showed what they all need to improve. After the meal, Izumo thanks the chef, who is happy to serve him again. The chef asks about Izumo's father, but Izumo says he hasn't spoken to him in years. Kigurashi, Izumo's rival, overhears this while leaving for the restroom, but doesn't comment. Hoshino announces that Kafka will become a permanent member of the Defense Force for saving many lives on his first mission. Everyone celebrates the good news. The next day, Mina gives Kafka his official appointment and tells him to work harder since he's not ready to fight alongside her yet. When he replies casually, she punishes him with 50 push-ups for not addressing her properly. She also mentions that Hoshino approved his promotion, so Kafka should meet his expectations.
That night, Kafka studies until late. Before going to bed, he notices the training room lights on. Inside, he finds Hoshino recreating their battle. Hoshino tells Kafka he plans to defeat Kaiju No. 8 with a single strike next time. This terrifies Kafka, but he realizes Hoshino is trying to protect both civilians and Defense Force members, so Kafka salutes him, promising to do his best. Hoshino jokingly puts Kafka in a headlock, teasing him about his 1% combat power, and sends him to bed. Meanwhile, a new kaiju, led by another humanoid, begins their attack. Kafka is on the roof when he notices many fireballs falling on the Defense Force base. The operation room informs Hoshino that several kaijus have been spotted, and they are launching an air attack. All the kaijus are Hanju class with a fortitude of 6 or higher. These dragon-like kaijus can fly and create fireballs, so Hoshino orders everyone to prepare for combat, explaining they can only use rifles on the flying kaijus unless they land. Kafka tells Hoshino that flying kaiju usually come alone, so appearing in a group means there must be a stronger leader. Soon, the leader, a daikaiju, appears and asks if Hoshino is the strongest human at the base. Hoshino says he is since Mina is away, and the daikaiju with a fortitude of 8.3 attacks Hoshino with an invisible blade, but Hoshino dodges. Hoshino orders others to handle the Hanjus while he fights the daikaiju. The daikaiju tries another attack, but Hoshino avoids it again. The daikaiju let out a loud cry, and the Hanjus respond, signaling they plan to destroy the base. The fight begins, and Hoshino realizes the daikaiju's skin is harder to penetrate than Kaiju No. 8's. Meanwhile, the Defense Force struggles to harm the Hanjus with gunfire. Kafka recognizes the Hanju species from 2003 and explains they must attack from the back, where the skin is thinner and the core is located. The leader orders the team to split, one group as a distraction while the other attacks the Hanjus from behind. However, another Hanju appears to defend its ally.
Kikaru arrives with incredible speed, using a new weapon designed for her after Mina and Hoshino acknowledge her 50% combat power. She smashes through the Hanju's front armor and avoids a fireball with ease. Kikaru activates her weapon's electric wave feature and uses her falling thunder technique to destroy the monster. Reno backs her up, impressing even Kikaru with his skills. Kikaru tells Reno to assist her if he can keep up, and he agrees. Kagaragi and Izumo, not wanting to be left behind, decide to target the Hanjus from behind while Kikaru distracts them. Hoshino lures the daikaiju to a battle area. The daikaiju admires Hoshino's skills and claims he will eat him to grow stronger. Despite getting pushed back, Hoshino cuts the daikaiju's arm and activates 92% of his combat power.
Meanwhile, Kafka transforms his legs to move faster and save an officer from a fireball. Kikaru steps in, telling Kafka to focus on rescuing the injured while she handles the monster. Reno reminds Kafka to stay cautious as he is now officially a defense officer. Soon, Nakanoshima's and Abina's units arrive to assist, along with other off-duty officers. The reinforcements help push the Honjus back, and Kafka feels proud of the 3rd Division's fighting spirit. Hoshino continues to target the weak points in the daikaiju's exoskeleton, cutting off parts of its body. The daikaiju realizes this strategy and closes its gaps. Hoshino uses his 2nd technique, Cross Slasher, and his 4th, Wild Slasher, almost tearing the daikaijus. Upper body apart. However, the monster regenerates and gets even more excited by the challenge. The daikaiju views Hoshino as a rival, but Hoshino cuts its back and finds its core. Using his 8th technique, Eightfold Slasher, Hoshino attacks the core. The operators believe Hoshino has defeated the daikaiju, but it transforms into an even larger, more monstrous form with multiple mouths emitting hot steam. The operators announce its fortitude has risen to 9.0 as the Daikaiju regains its full power. Because of its size, the operators say Hoshino won't be able to take down the monster alone. The monster's screams cause Kafka a headache, making him sense that something is wrong. Hoshino realizes his blades aren't cutting through the monster and mutters that this is why he hates large-sized kaijus. Hoshino has been fighting with full power for so long that his suit starts overheating. He has 1 minute before he can no longer use it. The Daikaiju orders the Honjus to attack Hoshino, but Hoshino keeps trying to reach the monster's back for an attack. As he gets close, the monster punches him.
Hoshino's suit overheats completely, and the operators tell him to get medical help immediately. Hoshino remembers how his father used to say that 200 years ago he would have been a legend. But in modern times, swords are outdated, and his dream of becoming a defense officer was pointless. Everyone is worried, but Hoshino still stands up, though he doesn't know what to do anymore. The Daikaiju breaks buildings as it searches for Hoshino and taunts him, saying small weapons can't hurt it now. And Honju throws a fireball at Hoshino, and he remembers how people, including a supervisor, told him to quit because kaijus are getting stronger, and relying only on blades would get him killed. Despite the doubts, he recalls Mina telling him he was valuable because she couldn't use blades, and someone like him was needed to handle normal-sized kaijus. Hoshino decides to fight, saying he will give his life to protect the base. He launches several attacks but gets caught in the Daikaiju's hand. Just as the monster is about to eat him, Kafka arrives. Reno yells at Kafka not to transform, but Kafka apologizes, saying he values his comrades' lives more than his own, and begins transforming into Kaiju No. 8. Before he can fully transform, Mina arrives on the scene, thanking everyone for their efforts. Hoshino tells the monster it has lost, confusing it. Mina fires a massive shot at the Daikaiju, and Hoshino says that the monster still hasn't faced the base's captain. Mina shoots again, and the operator informs her that the core is in the monster's back. Hoshino tries to cut the monster open, but it regenerates. Kikaru arrives, but her attacks barely scratch it. Hoshino instructs her to focus on the wounds he makes to inflict more damage. Together, they weaken the monster enough for Mina to get a clear shot. She exposes the core, but she only has 1 bullet left. Honju swarm in to protect the Daikaiju, but the team provides cover fire for Mina. Hoshino uses his last strength to cut the monster, and just as it's about to devour him, Mina fires her strongest shot. Hoshino smiles, saying the monster picked the wrong people to fight. The Daikaiju falls, and the team begins helping the injured. Mina salutes Kikaru and Hoshino, who salute her back. Kafka feels emotional and proud of them. Other team leaders tell Mina and Hoshino to rest while they handle the remaining Honjus, since Mina's power is nearly drained, and Hoshino is badly injured. However, the Daikaiju's final cry wasn't painful. A massive Yoju bomb forms in the sky. The operators warn it has the power of a nuclear bomb. Some officers shoot at it, causing small bursts, but Hoshino orders them to stop immediately. Mina tells everyone to evacuate, but Hoshino realizes there isn't enough time.
The Daikaiju's head addresses Hoshino, calling the fight a draw. Kafka runs toward the bomb at inhuman speed. Hoshino yells at him to stop, saying it's pointless, but notices Kafka's speed is unnatural for someone with only 1% combat power.
Kafka leaps into the air and transforms into Kaiju No. 8. The operator detects a massive kaiju signal above the base with a fortitude of 9.8. Hoshino realizes something is off about Kafka, but likes him too much to suspect him. In his mind, Kafka apologizes to Hoshino, Kikaru, and Reino, saying he transformed because the situation demanded it. He refuses to prioritize his safety while others risk their lives. As a member of the 3rd Division, he vows to save everyone. Kafka punches the bomb, sending it higher into the sky. The bomb explodes mid-air, destroying parts of the base, but sparing lives. Exhausted, Kafka jokes about being too old for such stunts. Mina points her gun at him, saying Kaiju No. 8 is under arrest. The deputy director of the defense force, Kenji Itami, says he can't believe that a daikaiju is part.
Kafka is captured and confined like a dangerous creature. He wonders if they will turn him into a weapon and if this is the end of his dream of standing alongside Mina in battle. Mina tells Kafka that he will be transported to the headquarters but does not listen to him when he tries to speak. Hoshino orders Kafka to remain quiet and move forward. Outside, the entire division is standing, and Mina tells Kafka that there are no cameras in the car. She explains that when Kafka rushed to save everyone, she realized he was still the same person she knew. Kafka asks her if he can still stand beside her in battle, and she tells him that he can hope for it because she will always be waiting for him. Kafka cries, and Hoshino orders the 3rd Division to salute the moving car.
Itami asks Hoshino what he is doing, and Hoshino replies that he is saluting their captain, Mina. Itami says it better be that as they can't have a defense team salute a kaiju. Several days later, as the base is being rebuilt, the recruits somberly discuss Kafka and how he saved them at various points. However, they know they have no say in the verdict Kafka will receive. Izumo says that if the public finds out, Mina calls the operator and asks her to prepare Kafka's file. One officer asks Hoshino what will happen to Kafka. He believes that next time, they will fight for real. Kikaru goes to her father's office, salutes him, and professionally requests that Kafka should not be eliminated, as he saved her life. However, Isao calls her a fool for coming into
of a chain reaction, with Kaiju 9 and 10 appearing so quickly. The recruits will be divided and sent to proper training. Izumo asks if this is because of Kafka and if they want to split up those who were close to him to keep an eye on them. Mina assures them that Kafka has nothing to do with the decision, as the plan has been in consideration for a long time. While others protest, Rhino volunteers to go to any division they assign him. He then sits next to Izumo and tells him that he was talking to his old commander, who holds a high position and wants to introduce him to someone even higher in rank to help Kafka. Isao walks up to Kafka and wonders if Isao might be as strong as one. In the audience, Itami explains to Kikaru that in 1971, Kaiju No. 2 nearly destroyed all of Sapporo.
And Kafka lets out a scream. Inside Kafka's body, he realizes that Kaiju No. 8 is no longer under his control. He sees the kaiju he swallowed telling him to kill, and Furuhashi asks Rino if he's not worried about Kafka since he agreed so quickly to join another unit. Rino replies that he wants to become stronger so that next time he can protect Kafka instead of Kafka always protecting him. The platoon leaders arrive and mention that today is the day they decide Kafka's fate, making it difficult to work and concentrate. One of them tells them not to worry too much, as they have all written testimonies highlighting Kafka's human-like behavior. Even Mina has been summoned to the headquarters. Mina arrives at the headquarters, where an announcer informs her that Isao is currently examining Kafka, and that she is there only for observation. When Mina tries to sit down, the announcer tells her no seat has been prepared for her. Kaiju No. 8 attacks Isao, who observes that Kafka is behaving more like an animal as his attacks lack strategy. Kafka fights back and eventually uses his body as a decoy to regenerate from his core and launch a surprise attack from behind. The arena suffers significant damage as the attack is recorded with a fortitude score of 10. The spectators believe they are witnessing a battle between two of the strongest kaijus. However, it seems that Isao doesn't want to kill Kafka as he missed several chances, but rather test Kafka's limits. Kikaru, watching the battle, believes that Isao is giving Kafka a chance to survive. Kaguragi reflects on how he joined the defense force to save lives, but now Kafka has saved his life. They conclude that actions speak louder than words, and Kafka has been there for them more than a few times. Meanwhile, Kaiju No. 8's fortitude continues to increase, and it starts to damage Isao. Kafka eventually grabs Isao into his arm and throws him into the wall. Kafka realizes that Kaiju is about to kill Isao, But when he looks at the audience, he sees Kikoru standing there. He tells himself that he cannot kill Isao in front of his daughter, but struggles to regain control as the kaiju continues to smash Isao on the floor. Kikoru recalls how she once told Kafka that she would kill him if he turned evil. However, she decides to believe in him and screams at him to resist.
Kafka finally uses all his strength to break free, but finds the kaiju he swallowed, ready to swallow him again. Kafka reflects on how he ruins everything at the last moment. The kaiju swallows him, and Isao believes all hope is lost. Just as Kafka is drowning, a younger version of Mina appears and holds his hand. The older Mina tells him she will be waiting for him. This gives Kafka the strength to come back to his senses. He punches himself instead of attacking Isao and declares that he is not Kaiju number 8, but Hibi no Kafka. After saying this, Kafka collapses to the ground, returning to his human form. An officer named Narumi aims his weapon at Kafka, but Isao tells him to stand down. Narumi asks Isao why he didn't call for backup, and Isao responds that he doesn't need it, as he won't die at the hands of a kaiju. Isao orders medical help for Kafka and then joins the meeting. The committee asks Mina for her opinion on Kafka's fate, but she is told her testimony will not affect the decision. They only want her input for the completion of their report. Mina says that Kafka played a crucial role in discovering the reproductive organs of kaijus and saved the entire 3rd Division from being wiped out by throwing away the bomb. She admits that Kafka was able to do this because he is a kaiju, but she emphasizes that even before his transformation, Kafka wanted to save people, and he continues to fight for their protection now. She says that Kafka has more humanity than most people, recalling how Kafka once cried with her when she was mourning the death of her cat. The committee calls her judgment biased, accusing her of judging Kafka based on something as vague as his heart. The committee decides that Kafka should be disposed of, and Isao is about to make the final decision. Kafka believes it's better to die as a human than to turn into a kaiju who has caused Mina so much pain. But then Kafka wakes up in a hospital bed, shocked to be alive. Isao is next to him and explains that he's not there to ask about Kafka's injuries. But Kafka is only concerned with thanking God that Isao is still alive, as Kafka fears disappointing Kikoru. Kafka asks if the council accepts him as human, and Isao tells him that no human could survive the attack Kafka endured on his heart, which confirms that Kafka is a kaiju. Isao explains that he ordered Kafka to be used as a member of the defense force on the front lines, despite opposition from most others. They argued that a kaiju could not be trusted in combat, but Isao believed Kafka could control himself. He points out that with new and stronger kaijus emerging, they need Kafka on their side to stand a better chance in future battles. Isao recounts the destruction caused by Kaiju number 6, which killed over 200 people and 3 captains, and emphasizes that with Kafka, they can defend the world more effectively. The council still disapproves, so Isao asks Kafka to prove his worth to them. Mina receives a notification and smiles before forwarding it to her division, announcing that Kafka's disposal has been deferred. Kikoru is happy and vows to become stronger so she can stop Kafka if necessary. The division celebrates Kafka's survival as Kaguragi and Izumo sigh in relief, while Rino promises to grow stronger by the time Kafka returns. Furuhashi makes a scene and asks Rino why he isn't jumping, to which Rino replies that he believed Kafka would prove his humanity, so he isn't shocked by the results. Somewhere else, Hoshino notes that the difficult part is still to come, as the world will eventually learn that Kafka is a kaiju, and he will need to prove himself so no one will refuse his help.